So just letting everybody. All right, next slide, please. So before we get started, we are providing translation for today's meetings in 3 languages: Spanish, Haitian Creole, and Cape Verdean Creole. And I will ask the translators to repeat what I'm saying in just a moment.
Yeah. So
Just one moment. So for those who need translation, we will go to the horizontal control bar at the bottom of your screen, click on the globe icon that's going to pop up that says interpretation, and then click on the language you would like to hear. And I'll ask the Spanish interpreter to interpret that, please.
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Tenemos servicio de interpretación para los hispanoparlantes. Quien desea el servicio de traducción e interpretación, por favor de dar clic en el globo que se encuentra en la parte inferior izquierda de su pantalla. Ahí podrán seleccionar el idioma en el que quieren escuchar. Después podrán seleccionar el español. Gracias.
And Haitian Creole, please.
nous capables de réunion en créole, n'a pas aller dans contrôle n'a parti en bas, n'a cliqué sur interprétation, après ça n'a cliqué sur langue que nous t'avons mettre des réunions et puis après n'a bien accès à réunion en créole haïtien.
Thank you. And then Cape Verdean.
Olá, boa noite. Vai na barra de controle horizontal na parte inferior do computador, vou clicar sem interpretação. Depois, a hora que eu clicar sem interpretação, clicar no idioma que eu quero ouvir. Agora, eu gostaria de entrar na reunião na crioulo.
Great. Thank you very much. And interpretation has started. Next slide. So I'd like to acknowledge that I think we have one elected official here tonight, Councillor Santana. Councillor, if you'd like to say a few words, we'd be happy to give you that opportunity.
Good evening, Morgan and team. I won't say anything. Just good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here and I'm just listening and appreciate the community and the residents who are tuned in tonight. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. So I'd like to share our community guidelines that we share and ask people to follow at every meeting. Number 1, we ask that everybody maintain respect for others. Please share if you're representing a neighborhood association or group. We also want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share their thoughts. So we're going to have a combination of letting people raise their hands and speak, and then opportunities to share in the chat and on some polls that we're going to do. So we ask that people limit their comments to 2 minutes and be aware of, giving and taking airtime. And we also know that, there's a lot of interest in these meetings. A lot of people have come to multiple meetings to have their voice heard. So we're going to prioritize voices that we haven't seen at these meetings before. And I also want to note that while the presentations are going on, we are going to be limiting the chat, so you can just chat with co-hosts. That's to avoid distraction for everybody while things are being presented. But feel free to send any questions to people whose names are send questions comments, and they'll be happy to answer your questions. And next slide, please. So just want to give folks a sense of where we are in the overall series of community meetings. So this is one of 3 design meetings that we are having. So we're having the second one tonight, and then the third one will be coming up in 2 weeks. And then obviously this project is part of a lot of other reviews. The second IAG meeting as part of the Article 80 review will be next week, focusing on transportation. And then this project is undergoing review by the Landmarks Commission, the Boston Civic Design Commission, and the Parks Commission. Now, next slide, let's get into tonight's agenda. So we'll have some welcome and introductions. We'll share back what we've heard from our previous design meeting, and then discuss the really important pieces that have come out of that meeting. Number 1, the program and scheduling of the stadium. We'll take a pause to do some discussion, and then come back for a presentation on what that means for the design of the stadium. And then we'll be opening it up again for discussion. Next slide. So we're going to have multiple speakers tonight, including Dion Irish, Chief of Operations, Avery Esdale from BPS Athletics, Diana Fernandez, the BPDA's Deputy Chief of Urban Design, members from Boston Unity's design team, Stantec, and members from the City of Boston's design teams, Jones Architecture and Crowley Cottrell Landscape Architecture. And so first, I'd like to hand it to Dion Irish, City of Boston Chief of Operations, to say a few words.
Thanks, Morgan. And welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Very excited about this meeting because we think this is a great project, a great opportunity, but I'm most excited because I believe what we will present tonight will reflect a lot of the feedback that has been shared in previous meetings and will dramatically improve this project that is ultimately going to expand the usage for BPS sports and for community access. So I'm grateful for all the community leaders and partner organizations who continue to help us steer this project to become a reality. Tonight, we'll be presenting an updated design for the project based on feedback that we've received from the community, and we're excited to show this improvement. So I'll stop there because we have a lot of presenters who will get more into the reasons why I'm excited. But I would now like to take time to introduce Jennifer Epstein, who's the controlling manager of Boston Unity Soccer. Jennifer?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I am Jennifer Epstein, the lead owner of Boston Unity Soccer Partners. And I want to echo Chief Irish in thanking everyone for being here to collaborate with us on a design for a revitalized Waite Stadium for our community. We're grateful to the design professionals here tonight and our partners at the city for all of their collaborative hard work. And we thank the community members who have consistently shown up and whose input continues to inform and make this project better. The concept of having a professional sports team share a home field with high school student athletes and community members is an unprecedented one that excites us. While it does present certain logistical and planning challenges, the model is broadly impactful, and the net result is that this partnership will dramatically increase Waite Stadium programming and uses for BPS student athletes and members of the public. So on behalf of Boston Unity Soccer and our team's ownership group, I want to be clear that we see this as an exciting opportunity to leverage the presence of a professional sports team to restore a publicly owned facility in the city that we all love. And we're excited to get into the details of how it will function tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Now I'd like to hand it over to Diana Fernandez. She's the Deputy Chief of Design for the Boston Planning and Development Agency. And Diana will help us to begin the formal presentation.
Thank you, Chief Irish. And I think we can go ahead to the next slide. Last time we were here with you, we had our first design workshop and meeting that really focused on establishing a set of design principles that was meant to grow out of the Franklin Park Action Plan in partnership with the Reed Hildebrand team. We walked through what those 8 guiding design principles were to both ground the project in elements that respected the Olmsted vision and also worked within the Secretary of the Interior standards for working within a cultural landscape. At that last meeting, we also walked through how those design principles will shape the actual design of the project and can help us sort of think through their application and how they will inform the reimagining of the overlook area and broader improvements within the Playstead. We do want to share back that we received a ton of feedback. I think 50 pages of chat comments and lots of sticky notes that really represent a broad range of feedback, both on those design principles, some of the design evolution work we shared last time, and also really highlighted to us that this conversation that we're going to have tonight around programming and the amenities that will be available in this project were front and center at our last conversation. And we're thrilled to spend our afternoon tonight to walk through that in greater detail and share some critical updates that touch on many of the questions you shared with us last time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to my colleagues at Jones Architecture to share a little bit about the existing conditions today and how we're building on this towards the future.
Thank you, Diana. As Diana mentioned, before we get into the program details that we're all excited about, We just wanted to take some time to recap some of the existing conditions of the facility and just remind us all why we're here today to improve it. So the images you see on screen are from the East Grandstand. This is the portion of the facility that was damaged by fire some years ago. It has essentially been mothballed and extremely underutilized. It's really only used for some minor field equipment storage and is really has no function. Lighting, prevalent water damage, and other structural damage, and the interior is really generally unsuitable for occupancy. So moving on to the West Grandstand. Next slide. So the West Grandstand right now is currently where most of the administrative functions for BPS leadership take place. There's a number of offices and their regional athletic equipment storage program is also on the second level of this building. It also is home to athletic support spaces like locker rooms, restrooms, and of course the grandstands for viewing the field. There are a number of building code and building systems deficiencies with this building, and they range from everything from inaccessible portions of the grandstand, locker rooms, and there's no elevator to the second floor. There's poor heating and AC or lack of AC, and there's really just inadequate concessions, restrooms, and other amenities for the seating count that the grandstand can account for. So moving on to the site around the grandstands. So there are those problems really kind of extend site-wide, and the network of paths and parking areas around the stadium are really kind of unclear, and there's a lot of fencing and gating kind of restricting or making access unclear. Parking is really done in kind of an ad hoc fashion on both Pierpont and Plaisted roads. And there are also a number of fences around, like in the center or the image on the right, there's some fencing around the south side of the stadium that is overgrown and really restricts views and clarity and access to the south side of the stadium looking to the north. And then in this image in the middle, you can see there's also prevalent stormwater problems which lead to ponding, particularly in the south side of the stadium, which make it unsuitable for hosting the discus and discus and some of the other throwing events that are currently taking place there. And now I'll pass it to Dion.
Thanks, Dan. So based on the results of the feasibility study, we established our goals for the renovation of White Stadium. First was to renovate and modernize the athletic and administrative functions that already happen at White Stadium. That includes a new state-of-the-art locker rooms, new athletic equipment, storage, new office space, and a 8-lane regulation track. Next slide. We also want a renovated White Stadium to serve the larger regional needs of the BPS athletics. Participation in sports has dropped from 44% in 2019 to 34% in 2021. So increasing participation in sports is a major goal for BPS athletics. White Stadium can serve as an athletic hub to provide things like strength and conditioning facilities and off-season programs, athletic training staff to teach students and athletes about injury prevention and also to treat injuries, event space for award ceremonies and team dinners and large team meetings, and more venues to hold playoff games, sporting events with large attendance numbers, and space for students to study in between practices and games. Next slide. This partnership helps the city to achieve and sustain these goals, and we're excited for the opportunity of a public-private partnership. The partnership will provide a transformative opportunity to revitalize White Stadium as a hub for sports and community events, introduce premium natural turf for the best playing experience for athletes and students, and construct state-of-the-art facilities to nurture student talent and passion for sports. It also provides dedicated maintenance to keep White Stadium and the surroundings clean and safe. Next slide. So bringing the National Women's Soccer League to Boston also brings many benefits for our community, including mentorship opportunities, boosting community pride, setting standards for sports facilities for student athletes, as Jennifer mentioned before, that pioneering types of partnerships, creating new professional pathways for young people, and also accelerating the implementation of the Franklin Park Action Plan and amenities that support other large events in Franklin Park. The next slide, I'll turn this over to Avery Edsdale.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to connect with us tonight. In the future, White Stadium will serve as a year-round facility that serves multiple sports events over the course of the year. In the spring, as you can see, we have a traditional track and field season, but also an ability to obviously support soccer and the recreational tennis and basketball spaces that people are accustomed to in the park. In the summer, it presents an opportunity to pursue football passing leagues on Playstead that will also be able to complement that with use of the locker rooms and use of the strength and conditioning spaces that we're envisioning in the new stadium. In the fall, our traditional fall season, we have soccer, cross country, football, and cheerleading. And now a new stadium gives us the opportunity to be a year-round facility. So in the winter, we foresee obviously track and field and cheer, but also an ability to utilize strength and conditioning space and community events throughout the year. Next slide, please. And looking at this schedule here, it's zooming in, it's a sample of the summer season. And here's a schedule of how the stadium could be used in the month of August. The vast majority of the time, as you can see, is dedicated to BPS and community uses. And these are things that have been going on for a long time. The weekday mornings to early afternoons is Park and Rec, their summer camp that they've offered for many years. BPS strength and conditioning and use of track and field in the afternoons. Key weekend community events like the Puerto Rican Festival, Caribbean Kitty Carnival, and Special Olympics take place on the weekends, and obviously cross country meets as we get closer into the year. August also marks the official start of our traditional MIAA interscholastic seasons. It typically starts the third Monday in August. So that would actually probably reinvigorate and add some additional activities in the stadium around preparation for the season with practice and scrimmages and eventually games. Obviously, Boston Unity games and as well as limited practices would also be part of this schedule that we'd be anticipating for the month of August. Next slide, please. Let's zoom in even more and look at a sample week in the spring. You can see how the stadium's used for many different things over the course of a day. The dotted lines show when the stadium is currently open to the public right now, which is typically 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. After the renovation, the blue shading shows an example of a week when Boston Unity has a game at White Stadium. Most of the time is used by BPS in the community. You can see that the only time that Boston Unity soccer is using the stadium is in the late afternoon and evening on game days. In a time no one else is using the field the day before. The game day doesn't necessarily have to be on Saturdays, so this is just a sample of a possible weekly schedule. The final schedule will be created with community input. We also want to highlight here that on game days, other events like cross-country meets will still be able to take place during the day and time. Next slide, please. And now here you can see what a week looks like after the renovations when there are no Boston Unity games at White Stadium. Again, we're excited, and I want to share how exciting it will be to have the space open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., including weekends. And I'll pass it back to Diana.
Thank you so much, Avery, for walking us through that. So we're going to take a little bit of a pause and share a little bit of a poll with the team. So I'm going to go ahead and get the next slide up here. So just to share a little bit on how to use this, you can either take a picture of the QR code that you see here on the screen, or you can join us at slido.com and then enter the numbers 2046511 to answer the question. And the question we wanted to sort of ask all of you is, what feedback do you have for us as we continue to develop the final seasonal, weekly, and hourly programming for White Stadium? What are the things that are really important to you, are important programs, either as a student, as a community member, as somebody that uses White Stadium on a daily basis? What are those programs that are most important to you? I see a couple participants adding their responses. So let's see. Give folks a minute or so to get their responses in. Great. So I see one here, give priority to the Boston schools closest, I'm assuming closest to the park. And it says, I use the area around the stadium for bird watching. My most important priority is to have a quiet area for bird watching. Let's see, there's another comment here. What does a 10 p.m. end time mean when people start to leave and it doesn't wind down until midnight? Should it be earlier on weeknights? So I just want to note here that 10 p.m. is meant to be the time at which during the week the stadium facility itself is opened. So I wonder if Morgan or Dion want to speak a little bit more specifically to that comment.
Yeah, definitely, Diana. So we've heard from a lot of people that they're, people in the neighborhood who like to run or walk the track, that they're frustrated that right now the stadium is only open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. With the new facility, we'd be able to keep the facility open from earlier in the morning to later at night, not for programming uses in the stadium, but so that community members would be able to access it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Morgan. So we're seeing here, let's see, community stadium, BPS students, and then I see the question at the top, or I'm sorry, we're going down. Okay, great. So opportunities to host younger female athletes and surrounding communities to experience the community of the stadium team, and to have connections with players, perhaps also joint community volunteerism from players and community members. It's a great point. And we do have Jennifer here, and I think one of the key partnerships we see with having the professional athletes is that exposure to our students and to the community. I wonder, Jennifer, if you want to make a couple of notes or comment about that.
Yes, it's a great question, and it's an awesome opportunity for internships in a variety of areas and mentorships of our athletes and our our female executives also for students at the Boston Public Schools. And I think I'm going to take the chance to answer one other question that I saw pop in, was about there's no team that only has one practice a week, and that is absolutely true. This is not going to be our main practice facility. So yes, we will be practicing more than once, but just not at White Stadium.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that clarification. Wonderful. So we're capturing so many comments in here. We're so excited to capture all of these. We'll keep note of them. I just want to move on to our second question as part of this Slido exercise. So one of the other things that we wanted to hear from the community about is what are the types of events or programs? So we talked about the Puerto Rican Festival, we talked about Kitty Carnival. What are the things that you feel like best serve the diverse interests of the community in the newly renovated stadium and Playstead area? So it would be great to hear your thoughts on what are those events or programs that you want to ensure continue to be hosted here? And then what are others that you wish could be part of the White Stadium program that don't exist here today? So we'll give folks a moment to add their comments in there. And again, for those joining who may have joined a little bit later, you can scan the QR code and go to slido.com and then add the numbers 2046511. So let's see, I see a comment here about community health initiatives like the Road to Wellness by the DeMock Center. It's a great point. So thinking about health and wellness in the park and potentially programs that could be hosted at White Stadium that speak to that. Let's see, I see at the bottom a weekly outdoor market. This is great. I know that the Stantec team has looked at that in the past as opportunities, concerts. Great. The Special Olympics will be so much better served with these facilities. I actually want to pause there for a second because I do think that that is a really excellent point. I will talk about this in a bit, but a lot of the infrastructural improvements that are being made to White Stadium as part of this partnership will certainly enable better resources and infrastructure for these other community programs that get to enjoy the Playstead today. So having, access to power and, sound systems and, restroom facilities, we see as being really an important sort of value add to a lot of these community programs. Fantastic. I see a question here about coordination with the Alma Lewis activities, music that's currently relevant, local Boston DJs. This is a great comment. We've taken a lot of sensitivity in partnership with Parks and the Reed Hildebrand team to think thoughtfully about the Alma Lewis Playhouse and the future programming opportunities in that space. So really looking forward to seeing how this project can support that future work. I see here a program for seniors, skating in the Grove. Okay, wonderful. There's so many wonderful comments in here. And again, we're capturing all of these. Thank you so much for participating. Let's move on to our last question here, which is what are your top or favorite activities that you anticipate participating in within the newly renovated stadium? We made this multiple choice, so please rank your top 3 activities and we'll give folks a minute to share their thoughts with us. Okay, attending community events like BAMFest, movie nights, half marathon, soccer, supporting local vendors, biking, casual park strolls and walks. We need to add bird watching to this list after the comment we received just earlier. This is great. Let's scroll down a little bit, track and fields, group fitness classes, picnics, track and fields, and just hanging out with friends in the Grove. I love that comment. That's exactly what I want to do as well. Great. So we're going to go ahead and keep this open. So add your comments in, but we're going to move on with the rest of the presentation and share a little bit more about some of the design considerations for the White Stadium program that we factored into what brings us to you today. So if we go to the next slide. The last time that we were here talking to you about the design elements, we spoke about the principles, and prior to that, in our February public meeting, we had shared a rendering of the proposed project, which looked at a West Grandstand renovation, a South Crescent building, and a Grove program. The work that we're going to present to you today is really a culmination of hearing hundreds and hundreds of community feedback points throughout all the meetings and workshops we've hosted and focus group conversations we've had over the last year. And what we want to share here today with you is how that community feedback has shaped and has started to change the design direction in which this project is going. So I want to start off with the first point here, which is that as part of respecting the principles defined by Reed Hilderbrand about the broader landscape, we wanted to take a look at how is it that we can reduce the impact and minimize the amount of change associated with this renovation by reducing the width of the West Grandstand. And this is something we worked really closely with the Stantec team to address and look at ways in which to improve that efficiency and provide more space on the east side. In addition to reducing the West Grandstand, we've also reduced the size of the fields. As you can see in the image on the left, we were proposing a much larger field that really pushed out the extents of the East Grandstand. And again, by being able to sort of tighten those dimensions, we were able to provide a greater buffer on the edges of the project. In addition to that, a lot of the feedback we heard in that February 12th meeting was around the Grove, and specifically the concerns around the building architecture, its relationship to the Overlook. And what we've done is to really respect the Overlook as the key promontory, the only architectural building that Olmsted built as part of his landscape legacy, and allow that to really stand on its own. And in order to do that, what we did here is we pulled the architecture that existed in what you see labeled as number 3 and integrated it into the overall grandstand architecture. So we introduced this language of wings and the South Crescent building to really integrate a lot of the program that had been distributed into those buildings themselves. In addition to making those changes based on that feedback, we've also heard loud and clear that there was a lot of pavement in the Grove, and there was great sensitivity around this being a park and preserving these really important park elements that the community gets to enjoy day to day. So we went back to the drawing board with both design teams and really looked at the integration of a new pathway system that builds on the recommendations provided in the Franklin Park Action Plan and introduce an area that is flexible, has reduced pavement, and actually brings back more green space into an area that had been fenced off. We also heard through community advocacy that bringing additional vehicles onto Plaisted Road is really against some of the action plan principles. And as you see here in number 6, we had proposed some parking on the east side. And in this new reconfigured design, we have relocated the storage and athletic functions to the west side in order to accommodate servicing operations off of Pierpont Road. We've also worked very closely to ensure that a lot of the program that had been distributed in these sort of buildings, both in the Grove and in the Crescent, were integrated into this wing architectural character that starts to expand from the existing grandstands and creates these opportunities to host both athletic programming, storage needs, and concessions. We've also heard that the scoreboard being closer to the play stud was something that people were concerned about. And we're continuing to explore how to bring the scoreboard function closer within the constraints of the field. And that's something we'll continue to work through, but are exploring alternatives as you see defined here in number 8. One of the pieces of feedback we also heard at the February 12th meeting was that the fencing around the Grove itself presented a barrier for the community. And we worked really hard with the teams and have identified a strategy in which we have removed all permanent fencing from the Grove. So on the 24, every day you'll be able to sort of walk through that space and not see fencing. There will only be temporary fencing during game days. And those are the sort of 20 days that have been allocated. We also embrace that, we need to think about this project holistically. So last time, we heard loud and clear that we were only showing you one side and you wanted to hear more about the east side. What we're going to present to you today and what you see in front of you is a true holistic approach that has integrated both architecture teams in working towards a unified vision for a project that embodies design excellence and that also reflects lots of community feedback along the way. And then the last point I want to note here is that we've also, through all of this work, wanted to prioritize BPS students, and providing an 8-lane track and state-of-the-art facilities is front and center to this project. And we're proud to be able to make these design changes and still accommodate new programming such as 8 lanes, new field and track sports, and all of the athletic facilities that will certainly improve the athletic experiences for our students for many generations to come. So that was a lot that I just threw at you. There's so much work here. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Tamara and the Stantec team to dive into greater detail into the components of what I just described to you today.
Thank you, Diana. So if a picture captures 1,000 words, then we believe that a video captures 1,000 pictures. So we did a draft video, which we're rolling out to you tonight. And please, please, please understand that this is all still a work in progress, but we thought it would help to be able to have folks visualize all of the changes that Diana talked about, where people were so fearful in the previous meeting that we were cutting off the playstead and having barriers. And so we want to just show you the openness that we've been able to achieve. And how you'd experience this on a typical day. So Angie, go ahead. So while we're a bird, we can look and see the stadium, but as we come down to regular eye level, we're going to be at the parking lot near the zoo and start to see families having their birthday parties and picnics and family gatherings, on a day maybe like yesterday afternoon that was so gorgeous. And then you can see, some baseball games being played, the overlook wall in the distance, but generally, a really open, wonderful, pastoral playstead still. So, a place to be able to bring your blanket, put on your headphones and sunbathe, or just hang out with your friends. Lots of people mentioned just hanging out with their friends. Then the Grove itself is able to we've studied it with so many different functions. I loved all the different things that people were mentioning in the poll, storytelling and yoga. And then there's food. There's never really been food at this place. Or so you can now go to a food truck if you're hungry, get a taco or empanada, or just turning and looking again from here over the Grove, and the sense of openness and outdoor furniture that can be moved around, and just a really nice open space. You're seeing the area with picnic tables in front of the South Crescent. And now we're going into the stadium. There's some functions for Boston Unity Team Store. We could probably put great t-shirts in there for the Boston Public Schools as well. You can look through the South Crescent. It's open on both sides on nice days, so you can see right through the playstead. We're now coming past the track to the field. You can see the scoreboard there. As Diana said, it's still a work in progress, but it's been moved away from the playstead. It's only one-sided, and it's painted green in order to also sort of go with the park palette. And then now we're just floating again above, so you can see how the holistically designed stadium sort of sits, really contained and condensed to where the existing stadium is. We're working on the canopy design. It's actually helping us contain light from the night sky and also sound from the crowd noise, and it becomes a weather protection as well. And then you saw lastly the little clamshell wall there as you come around the West Grandstand and the red doors that everyone knows so well. So again, it's a work in progress, but we hope that we helped you sort of visualize, on a typical day, what that might feel like for the neighbors and anyone who uses Franklin Park. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move into design consideration number 1, which, as we discussed last time, was to try to tighten up the stadium so that it wasn't spilling into the playstead, either with fences or with the bean, it was called. And I believe we've succeeded in this. This is the sketch that we showed you last time. And now we're going to go on and just talk about the refinements that we've been working on. So next. Right, so we it's very important. It's a landmarked park, and there's also incredible significance to the building. And so we are making sure that we preserve the west clamshell wall. It has just incredible character. And we will be protecting it during construction, and we will be cleaning it and doing all of the things that it needs from its deferred maintenance so that it doesn't actually crumble apart. And then we are also preserving the north entry pillars. Next. And we've been inspired. If any of you have been interested or are interested, you could come to our Boston Civic Design Commission meetings. We've definitely been inspired by the architecture of the mid-century and sort of the Art Deco period. And we've been looking for a unified design approach and working with the East Grandstand team to just make sure that this all fits together as one whole. Next. I'm going to hand it over to Dan from Jones Architects.
Thanks, Tamara. So we wanted to take a look to see, show you how the BPS program on the east side and the west northwest corner really fits into this newly developed form we've been working on. So one of the drivers to the wings, as we've called them, that kind of flank each one of the grandstands, is to really give spaces like the BPS offices, the strength and conditioning and sports medicine suite, really give them access to natural light and put them in these one-story buildings that are able to get them both natural light, views to the field, and also have direct access to the field in the case of this strength and conditioning center, that you can have student athletes go in and out of that space and directly access the track or the field. The other consideration with these wings was particular to the sensitivity to the landscape, particularly on the Playstead Road side. We wanted to make them one story and long and narrow to allow them to be a little bit less invasive to the pudding stone outcroppings and the other landscape features out on the Playstead Road side. The other program that is in the east side of the building for BPS is the locker rooms and kitchen spaces that are below the grandstands, tucked away. And then the other prominent element is the community room, which will be on the main concourse overlooking the field. So that'll be able to be used during games as for spectators, but also it'll have a really elevated feel when it's hosting community events, whether that be at night or during the day, you will get that view out to the field. Back to you, Tamara.
Sorry, muting problem. Thank you, Dan. Yep, and on the Boston Unity side, we have similar facilities needed for having a soccer team. We've got the locker rooms and the press box, and we have suites as well. And then the bucket seats, which actually it's true for all of the seats in the stadium. They're all bucket seats rather than bleacher seats, which is just much more comfortable and sort of up to date. And also there will be ADA seating, which is required, but also, we've been talking to several groups to make sure that this entire area is open to universal design and folks with all kinds of different abilities. And then concessions and restrooms on our side as well. Next.
And then just to take a look at this diagrammatic plan of the ground floor. So we just wanted to talk a little bit more about how both the BPS and the Boston Unity functions kind of lay out at this level. And I think as a team working together, we really wanted to find examples where there can be synergy between our programs and make for efficient use of footprint. So for example, in this plan in the bottom left corner, we positioned BPS's athletic equipment storage together with some of the building operations program, like loading dock and service area as part of the Boston Unity program. And the reason for this was to really consolidate service delivery and other vehicles like coaching staff that are coming in to receive equipment from the athletic storage area. We really wanted to consolidate that vehicular traffic to this area of the site rather than have it spread out, which you saw in previous designs where it moves over to the east side. On finding more synergy as well as we continue on. And we can go to the next slide. So the next design consideration was really, how do we create a multifunctional sports facility? And by multifunctional, we don't just mean different sports, but how do you accommodate, the public school aspect of it, professional sporting events or professional soccer, and then the recreational aspect of it. So next slide. So just to see how BPS sports overlay into this equation, you'll see that the field and the track and field inside the stadium will of course host track and field, BPS soccer, football, cheerleading, all of the activities that you saw Avery go through at the beginning of the show. And as we've mentioned before, the Strength and Conditioning Center will be for BPS use and at this southeast corner of the stadium with direct access to the field. And that'll also be an all-season facility, which expands the usage of the stadium. Some things that happen outside of the stadium, just adjacent to the playstead, to kind of limit some of the wear and tear and conflict with sports on the inner part of the stadium. We've looked at putting throwing sports like discus, shot put, javelin, and hammer out at this southeast side of the site. And we've also, of course, made accommodations to renovate those the two basketball courts in a similar location to where they are today, but to modernize them. Next slide.
So for the soccer field, we're definitely looking at a professionally maintained regulation size field, which will have premium natural grass for the best playing experience for both the athletes, but also for the Boston Public School students. It will be a surface like none other than they've ever played on before. Next. And so that field of play, which is 74 yards by 115 yards, is regulation size. And but yet at the same time, it's setting that new standard of sports facilities for the BPS student athletes, but the field size is reasonable, but it's not excessive in terms of women's sports. We really tried to find that sweet spot, as Diana mentioned earlier. And it will expand the existing playing field by 10 yards, which is that red dash box. Next.
And then just to take a look at the track around the field. So of course, we're looking at adding an 8-lane track here with double straights. And that's going to make it much more efficient for not only weekly track meets, but also for practice activities. You'll also see that inside the oval, just between the grass field and the inner part of the track, called the D areas, we'll have accommodations for high jump, long jump, and triple jump, pole vault, and steeplechase as well in those D areas. So those will be moved into the infield, which is different than where they are today. And it'll allow better access for spectators to see those events. And some other benefits to this layout is that when this is really a layout like this and the professional size field is really combined with the amount of spectators that the facility can host, it'll really become a potential location for state level track meets and even to host NCAA or USA track and field events. Next slide. And then just to speak a little bit to the sports that are played on the Playstead recreationally today, those basketball courts that we had just talked about replacing will be open for public use. And of course, the cricket, baseball, softball, and the cross-country track will remain as they are used today. The only thing that we are changing here, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail on slides to follow, but the tennis courts will be moved off to a different location at the Shattuck area, and we'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. Next slide. And so just to summarize this a bit, you can see that with the addition of a professional team to the stadium, that BPS is really going to benefit from an improved track and field facility. They're going to benefit from a professionally maintained grass surface and expand those field sport their field sport capabilities. And the expansion of the seating capacity will allow for higher profile events, and of course with better amenities that come with that renovation. And additionally, all of the recreational sports that happen today in the Playstead will continue on as they do and have done for years. Avery?
Thanks, Dan. This chart shows a summary of the programs the partnership will allow us to add compared to what we have right now. So I think what you can see from this slide, BPS will have incredible gains across most of its athletic activities. As Dan talked about earlier, going from a 6-lane track to an 8-lane track, addition of hammer throws and steeplechase and all other field sports remain at the stadium and will be improved. Those are areas that we're growing and seeing great success from a lot of our students right now. So that is a huge add. As in addition to our much needed offices and the ability to kind of keep up with the trends with the strength and conditioning space. Because we'll have a high quality field, we'll be able to expand the number of hours that the field can be used. We used it about 250 per year typically, with a goal of at least 800 per year. So overall, there are no net losses to the public in terms of athletic facilities. Next slide, please. And I know we've talked about this we want to be clear about what the project means for football and tennis. Obviously, football an interscholastic sport. Tennis is also an interscholastic sport, but also one that has great interest from a recreational standpoint. BPS has 7 current varsity football teams. 5 teams have dedicated home fields. 2 teams currently do not have home fields and play 5 home games at White Stadium. So our goal going into the renovation is that, and you can see it here on the slide, all our teams will have their own home field. They all will have access to off-season training, strength and conditioning, and we'll make it a priority to make sure that they all play at White Stadium during the season. I think we've talked about it. Obviously, we have some traditional rivalry games. We'll be in a position where any of the MIA playoff games will be able to be hosted there. And I think it presents an opportunity for us to really be creative with our schedule and look to seek out opportunities to do some different things with football. I know we've talked about, we haven't really got it off the ground. We've thrown it out into the atmosphere, but looking at a city championship game in football. So from the football front, I think there's a lot of opportunity. In tennis, the renovation, in tennis, we are proposing implementing a recommendation from the Franklin Park Action Plan. There's a strong, like I said before, a strong group of recreational users that made a very strong recommendation, and we have our BPS interscholastic tennis team. So our move would be to implement the recommendation from the Franklin Park Action Plan and plan to remove the 2 tennis courts from the Playstead area and create a new 4-court complex near the Shattuck. This recommendation meets the recommendation from the Franklin Park Tennis Association, and I think presents a great opportunity for some partnership between the association and even our tennis teams in the city. I'll pass it over to Chris.
Thanks, Avery. So in this section, we're going to talk about the site and the area around the stadium. And as recommended in the Franklin Park Action Plan, we're removing barriers, improving connections, and sharing resources. And our latest evolution of the Grove eliminates all permanent barriers, as we've mentioned, and creating more publicly accessible space with new facilities that allows the Playstead to expand and now meet the stadium. Next slide, please. As we advance the design, we've also been very careful to preserve and enhance the existing character-defining elements and view sheds of the original Olmsted design. The overlook is naturalistic, elevated promontory designed by Olmsted, made of pudding stone rock excavated from the Playstead. It was designed for spectating activities on the Playstead, and as such, we will be removing adjacent invasive species to open up and reinstate the broad views and to allow the promontory to be more visible from the Playstead as originally intended. We will also be preserving the pudding stone outcroppings in proximity to the stadium that remind us of Olmsted's ideas of revealing and embracing the geology of the site. Other important views include the axial view from the north to the stadium northern entry that reminds us of, sorry, one second. Other important views include the axial view from the north to the stadium northern entry, the elevated views from Long Crouch Wood, and the lower level views from south across the Playstead's expansive recreational open space. It is of course of great importance to preserve the existing tree canopy that envelops the Playstead and the stadium. Our design carefully preserves existing heritage and legacy trees and important groupings of trees that were part of the original naturalistic design. I'm going to hand it over to JP.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening. My name is JP Charbonneau. I'm an associate principal with Crowley Cottrell, the landscape architects for the BPS part of the White Stadium project. Given all the information presented earlier, there is an important question to ask. How does the expansion and all the stadium improvements affect the park, and more specifically, the playstead? I believe the key to answering this question is to ask ourselves what we consider to be inside and what is outside the stadium. I would like to use this opportunity to test this idea in a series of drawings and walk through the expansion step by step. The drawing on the left illustrates the stadium as it is today, with the playstead shown in green. The areas in white within it are areas we believe feel like they are inside the stadium. In addition to the areas inside the 10-foot tall perimeter walls and grandstands, note the area to the south enclosed in the dotted line. This represents the fenced-in practice area, which also feels inside the stadium. Over time, the fencing has become overgrown with vines and other vegetation, reinforcing the separation from the playstead. The middle drawing illustrates the expansion of the track and field, which will be adequately sized and provide BPS and Boston Unity what they need, which was described earlier. Note the track and field are expanding into the footprint of the existing East Grandstand. The drawing on the right illustrates all new buildings in blue. Since our February public meeting, we have worked to contain all building elements within the volume or shape of the stadium. Heights vary, with some buildings 1 story tall, but this drawing represents the footprint of all new structures. Next slide, please. So back to our original question, what does this all mean for the playstead? This drawing combines all the layers shown previously and highlights new buildings where it expands into the playstead beyond the existing walls, fencing, and grandstands shown in purple. But I would also like to point out the areas to the south. By removing tall fencing, overgrown vegetation, and large expanses of paving, here we have the opportunity to expand and create more open-feeling lawn, which I believe is one of the character-defining features of the playstead. When viewed together with the stadium expansion, overall there is a net increase to the playstead, or put another way, an increase to how we experience the park outside the stadium. Of course, there are many factors which contribute to how we feel and experience a place. This is just one part. Considering our primary attitude and objective is to improve and strengthen the stadium's connections to the playstead, we believe these developments are encouraging steps towards that goal. We will continue to study and test these ideas and have future conversations with you all. Thank you. I now pass it back to Chris.
Thanks, JP. Here we'd like to explain some of the design constraints our design aims to solve. Those of you who have visited the site after rain events will have noticed the area surrounding the stadium and inside the future growth space are often inundated with water, rendering much of these areas unusable. We will provide new drainage infrastructure, including sustainable stormwater management systems, allowing water to dissipate quickly during and after rainfall. We will also remove the chain link fencing that currently prevents access to the stadium from the playstead and integrate purpose-built, publicly accessible facilities into the stadium design. Next slide, please. The barrier-free grove design, which you've seen in a preview of the animation, will now seamlessly integrate into the playstead for daily use. This space is also intended to provide a venue for occasional small and medium-sized events. Here you can see suggestions for music, seasonal and winter, and passive evening events like movie nights. We would love to hear from you further and receive your input and suggestions for the functions and events you want to see in the space. Next slide, please. The growth space is also designed to host infrequent ticketed events, including Boston Unity soccer game events. We propose that the Grove area be surrounded by temporary fencing to allow controlled access into the event space for a couple of hours before and after the game. While there will be increased activity inside and surrounding the stadium at this time, everyday park activities will still be able to take place before and after the events, and cohabit on the adjacent park trails and open spaces during these events. Next slide, please. You've seen in the animation earlier, the presentation that shows a typical day in the Playstead. This image depicts the same scenario of the Playstead in a static diagram format. You can see here that the new improved stadium sports fields and track will be open to the public during operational hours, as will the new food and beverage concessions and restroom facilities. New basketball courts are proposed, and while we may not have captured all of the types of activities that do and could occur in the Playstead, this diagram illustrates that for 365 days a year, the activities that occur every day or on occasion will not be impeded by the stadium and grove design, but rather augmented and enhanced with more open park space, new upgraded publicly accessible stadium facilities that will improve park goers' experience of the Playstead and wider Franklin Park. Back to Diana.
Thank you, Chris. And with that, I just want to go ahead and summarize some of the things that we just shared with all of you. I think Chris's last slide was just a really wonderful reflection, I think, of the progress and change that has been made to date. Again, we are still in the process of modifying this work and are really open to feedback. And really want to use the rest of this conversation to solicit any additional comments, any sort of reactions or thoughts you have to some of the design changes we've made here that we hope have been responsive to some of the community feedback we've received to date. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide. And what we'd like to do is to open this up for feedback. I did see that we have Counselor Fernandez-Anderson here, and I want to make sure that we provide the counselor the opportunity to speak. Counselor, can you unmute?
Good evening, everyone. Counselor Fernandez-Anderson here. Thank you so much to BPDA and all of your staff. Diana, apologies, you are doing a phenomenal job. As always, I have stated in the past that I am in support of this project, and of course, I'm very interested in the conversation about transportation, community benefits, and environmental impact, and continuing this process to ensure that we are mitigating the issues as they come, and of course, developing the plans as best as possible so that we can meet community concerns and needs. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation and being here. Look forward to continuing to engage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Counselor. We really appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide here. We really just want to hear feedback. So at this point, if you have any questions, we're going to open up the chat feature. And you also have the ability to raise your hand. But we have a couple of questions that we have here to sort of guide our conversation tonight. But the first one here is, for the Grove, are there any programs you or your family would like to use here? Are there any questions we can help answer around design and programming? And to the counselor's questions around transportation and community benefits, we will talk at the end of this presentation about a series of meetings coming up that will focus on community benefits and transportation. So we look forward to continuing those conversations. Let's see. So I see a couple of hands here. Kevin, do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Thank you so much. I'm Kevin Bott. I live in the Parkside neighborhood, very close to the stadium entrance. I have to compliment the design team. They have done made great progress, I think, in reducing the footprint from what we previously saw and taking out pavement that I think has been used for parking in the past. So The improvements, I think, from green space on the east side of the stadium is well received, at least by me, and I think by many park users. One of the things I would still like to encourage you to look at, the stadium compared to what's there now is still quite massive. And I know you have a lot of things you want to fit into each grandstand. I'm wondering if you really need a community room up top of the East Grandstand, and for that matter, special boxes on the West Grandstand. If you couldn't lower the elevation of those overhangs to make it less prominent, and even think about redoing what Olmsted once had on the overlook, that shape, which is sort of curves into the contours of the land. And if you can look at kind of redesigning those overhangs and make them lower, I think that would help in the direction we're trying to go at, which is to keep the stadium within the park and inside of all the areas that people like to use and not intrude too much. And so the height, if you can look at that, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Kevin. Oh, sorry, Diana.
Sorry,
I
Tamara.
just wanted to say,
I was
yeah,
gonna hand it to you and Dan, so go
Oh,
ahead.
okay, great. No, that is definitely top on our list for the next area of study. So thanks for bringing it up, and we agree with you.
Okay, apologize there. Had trouble unmuting. Walter, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I think the design is coming along really nicely, and it's nice to see that so much of our feedback's been reflected. Seems to be like a very nice balancing exercise. It would be interesting, following up on Kevin's question, to hear how much higher in raw footage those two walls would be, the back wall and the wall facing Walnut Ave. And the other, it's really a comment more than a question, but is hearkening back to actual programming. I saw in some of the comments that people were happy about having evening hours, and actually I think that's a great thing. But also people were mentioning concerts, raves, DJs, and I just want to remind people this is a residential neighborhood, and you've got lots of children within 360 feet of the stadium. And so I'd ask, as we think about programming more specifically, that we think about general volume limitations at night when the public is using it, and just deprogramming things that are going to be additive to the amount of noise pollution that we already have. And I'll go on mute if for the answer on how high how much additional height is planned currently.
Thank you so much for your question, Walter. I think we are still working through the details. I want to be clear that the heights proposed on the west side are following that existing clamshell, right? Where we're sort of trying to work within that envelope, and then the wings themselves are meant to sort of be lower in height. And at our next design meeting, we hope to come back to you with elevations and sections that walk through all those details and more refinement. I think it's helpful to hear this feedback because we're still developing the precise dimensions on those pieces. As it relates to your question here around programming, I wonder if Morgan, you can speak a little bit to how we intend to ensure that the community is part of the decision-making for what programs exist in the Playstead and in that Grove area in the future.
Sure. Hi, Walt. Nice to see you. We definitely hear your feedback. None of us are proposing raves, even if somebody puts that in the chat. I think we are hoping, as I mentioned, we are hoping that to have the stadium itself open evening hours for people to use it quietly for walking, running on the track. We are excited to have programming in the Grove, but I think my colleagues at Boston Unity would agree that we want that programming to have a community voice in what it consists of, the hours, we want that to be an additive to the community and something that people can enjoy that isn't going to be keeping folks up at night.
Thank you, Morgan, and thank you, Walter, for your comments. We'll make sure to come back for design meeting number 3, and we should get into more details on heights. Hazel, can you unmute, please?
Yes. Hello. Yes, I really appreciate this meeting. It's given me a lot of information. Everybody presented very well. And at first I was 100% against this new proposal, but now I'm coming on board because of the nice changes that you made and how you have listened to the suggestions of the community and of other people. So I appreciate this meeting. My question is, what I use the park for is walking around the White Stadium on the outside. There's a path where you can go around the Playstead and all the way around the whole White Stadium. Now, will that still be open with for walking? And will it still be as, you know, nice, and or will I be cut off at one point and then have to go out into the street? And also, my other part of the question was about the concerts. I do not want to hear any concerts because I'm like 5 minutes from the park. So I appreciate now that the concerts end at like 9 o'clock and there's no noise, it's total quiet. So I would not want to hear 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I would not want to hear noise. So thank you.
Hazel, for those comments. I wonder if it's okay if we can go back to one of the slides that shows the plan, the side-by-side plan. To answer your first question around the pathway system and how, you know, the sort of Playstead Road that loops around, that will remain accessible throughout. I'm sorry, if we can maybe stop on. Sorry, let's go back to the side-by-side. Just want to make sure we can point to it. There we go. So you can see here that Playstead Road will remain accessible regardless of whether there is a game day event, and there's some programming in that area that's labeled the Grove. And what you'll also see is that there's a series of smaller paths that exist on the east side and on the west side of both grandstands that we are enhancing, doing new pavement, that still allow for that circulation in and around the Playstead, and that there will still be, you know, opportunities for you to connect through the Playstead to Playstead Road and to Pierpont Road on the west. So we have been working diligently with the design teams to ensure that we're maintaining that access and that that is available to residents day in and day out. And then as it relates to the comment on the concerts, we're certainly taking that into account, working through the details around noise mitigation and ensuring that, you know, a lot of the infrastructure that's coming online here may also present opportunities for, you know, future events that may have better, you know, there may be better sound and electrical equipment to reduce some of that noise today, given the lack of infrastructure on site. Wonderful. So I see, Peter, you have your hand up. Do you want to unmute?
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you all for this presentation. It's been very enlightening. You've taken some of our feedback, which I very much appreciate. It really shows that you're trying to work with the community. So that's terrific. I appreciate that. I like the design as well of the stadium overall, and some of our comments that were worked into the plan. One thing I wanted to just mention, and I did in the chat as well, but I wanted to just mention, if at all possible, to put the tennis courts back. I think it's great that they're at Shattuck as well, but if we live closer to the Walnut side, which I do on School Street, it's quite a bit of a walk to Shattuck to play tennis, and I do play tennis a fair amount. So I love having those tennis courts. I love when they put them in and redesigned, made them better. So I would love to see that. It's also, you know, aside from organized tennis, there's a lot of, I think, community members who play, and with the Playstead and all of the food and great amenities over there, it would be nice to have the tennis courts in that same area. So that's one quick thing. And then the other one, I had an idea to both increase a lot of more of the green space by making the entrance on Walnut, where we're proposing to bring in shuttle buses, instead of making it like a U shape and cutting back another section of Walnut, you'll probably eliminate some parking by doing that, and parking is imperative to the residents of the area. Instead, you might want to think about expanding the entrance over there from Walnut and making it so that you can have like a rotary, for lack of a better term, and they could just turn around right there. It wouldn't be much of an impact. You wouldn't have to expand it much more than it already is, and they could come in and go out the same entry exit. So
we are holding everybody to 2 minutes, so I do apologize. Please do send your comments to us via email or in the chat. It's great to hear this feedback. I think we're trying to be as responsive as possible, so we appreciate your comments around the tennis courts, and we'll bring that back to the team as we continue exploring solutions. And then as it relates to Walnut Avenue, you're right on. We're having these transportation conversations where we're thinking more comprehensively about the sequencing of entries and parking and how we circulate within this area. Thank you, Peter. Let's see. I see Kaliga. Kaliga, do you want to unmute?
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. I think people have done wonderful work with the design, but I still will always say, and I'm sure a lot of people here are going, oh my God, she's talking again. But I don't understand why all this is rolling forward when there is still an active lawsuit against us happening. And I can tell you daily, there are a lot of people that support having the soccer team there, but the opposition within many communities, which form one community in Boston, are today, 3 more people told me they were opposed that I didn't know. People are in the community are very opposed to a soccer team. No matter what you do, 10,000 fans traipsing through green space is detrimental to the flora and fauna, no matter what you do with your design's wonderful. I'm embracing it, but it doesn't belong in the park. I'm sorry. I will always say that we need every inch of green space, not with people traipsing through it, but natural and untouched, because we're not in climate change, we're in climate crisis. And this is the lungs of a lot of communities around Franklin Park. And I will say again, Nickerson Field is already there. It's near the T. There is parking. We can change turf to green grass much easier and with a lot less money than you can do it at White Stadium. You guys have to work this hard, and the transportation people have to work this hard to get a plan which is so convoluted and complicated, and no one really kind of believes it's going to happen, that's going to affect the surrounding communities with it. I mean, all of the design things that you have to do to accommodate this, because it's in a park where you don't have to do that if we take it out of a park. I'm opposed to it because I've got kids, and even if I didn't, who's coming behind us? We need a green legacy. And
thank you,
that's why.
Thank you. We really appreciate your comments, and I do apologize. We're keeping everybody to 2 minutes, but please do send your comments to us in the chat. I'd love to sort of take the opportunity to have Morgan speak to the legal case and just provide an update there from the city.
Sure. So the city and Boston Unity are plaintiffs in a lawsuit by folks alleging that the city doesn't have the legal right to engage in this contract, and that the proper review channels are not being gone through. A judge has found that on the merits, this case is unlikely to succeed in court. We are confident in our legal argument and our legal pathway, and we are confident that this is a very beneficial project for the community.
Thank you, Morgan. Cleo, I see you have your hand up. Can you unmute?
Hi, my name is Cleo. I'm an Upper Montebello Road resident and daily park dog walker and recreation user. I'm also a lifelong JP resident and grew up on a different corner of the park, but now live on this one, and a BPS girls soccer coach. And I just wanted to say, as someone who literally walks around White Stadium every single day, I think that this is great, especially the stormwater mitigation, because it is so wet all the time. But just kind of in contrast, you know, maybe to the previous commenter would say that I think that there are a lot of community members here that are really excited by the possibility of having such a fun thing to do in our neighborhood and such a big new addition. And additionally know that quite a few BPS students are quite excited by the prospect of sharing this space with some of the best soccer players in the world. Yeah, it wasn't really a question, it's more of a comment, but that's all.
Thank you so much, Cleo. We appreciate that. Beefy, we see that you have your hand up. Do you want to unmute?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I would just like to say, and I'll keep it quick, I'm super excited about this. Like, I don't even know why there's any type of complaints. This is beautiful. Not only is it just beautiful, it's bringing all communities together from around the city. Usually certain parts of the city have their own parks, their own little spaces. The way how you guys are lining this up, this is going to bring the whole city together in one place. And this is what the city should look like. Diversity all in one place, not in all neighborhood certain parts. This is beautiful. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, people should stop complaining. Let's be grateful. God is good, and God bless the city and Michelle Wu, Mayor Wu, rather than everybody that's trying to make our city and take us to another level. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beefy. We appreciate that comment. And Ted, I see your hand up. Do you want to unmute?
Am I unmuted? I guess I am.
Hi, Ted.
Hi, how you doing? I kind of like Beefy there. He sort of encapsulates the way I feel about it too. That I've coached track and field athletes at White Stadium since the late '80s, and I have watched that facility pretty much crumble into itself. We have to do something, and this is definitely something. Everybody, you know, doesn't necessarily see it as the perfect solution, but it's way, way, way better than what is there right now. As for the tennis courts moving, the tennis courts were moved so that the throwing sports would have some place to be. There are 2 basketball courts there, and if you really think about it, you can play tennis on a basketball court with the right kind of equipment. So that wouldn't be necessarily the end of the world. But if you put the tennis courts back, then there's no place for the track and field athletes who throw things to actually do what they do. That's why the change was done, just for the record. And again, I support this, completely. It's after like 30 years of watching the kids in Boston compete and train in a substandard facility. It will be just way beyond exciting to have the kids come into something that is actually better than what they see when they go to meets out in the suburbs, as opposed to when they go to meets out in the suburbs going, oh, whoa, wait a minute, this is what a real track looks like? So I'm excited to see it done. That's it.
Thank you so much, Ted, and thank you for your advocacy for track and field throughout this process. Karen, I see you have your hand up.
Hello.
Hi, Karen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Karen Money Brodek from the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. there is no disagreement on any side that White Stadium needs renovation, and it's appalling that for 50 plus years the city has allowed it to look like that. But the challenge before us, and it's being skipped here, is that the Franklin Park Action Plan, which was developed with all folks here, actually specifically says that a private provider and outsourced services or management of the facilities is not preferred for Franklin Park. This was what was put together with the community. And we have never seen an alternative or any proposals that shows us what could be done with the $50 million identified by the city. Instead, the only proposal that is being shown is this one. And it is unfortunate that instead of going through the process of the state law, which requires that if you're going to privatize or lease something for 30 years, you do that process, the city decided not to do that. And because this is a precedent that could mean that any park in the state could be privatized, could be handed over to a for-profit institution and be allowed to not be available to the public according to a contract in terms that none of us have seen. I love women's soccer. I think Boston would benefit from having women's soccer. I play women's soccer, but this process, unfortunately, has been incredibly undemocratic. And the community was not asked how they would like this to be renovated. The only guidance that is provided, I will finish, in the Franklin Park Action Plan says a renovation of White Stadium. And it's too bad that this administration and others think they can just make decisions without really involving the community, except.
Sorry, Karen, we're trying to keep everybody to 2 minutes and we need to be fair to everybody. So thank you so much for your comments. I think in response to your comment related to the Franklin Park Action Plan, my colleague here, Liza, is here from Parks, and I think can speak a little bit to some of the work that was done in the action plan and the intentions there. I will also note, right, that although the action plan did not imagine this type of partnership, we have been able to engage the authors of the action plan as we did in the last design meeting to help us really understand how we can shape this work moving forward. We understand there's certainly ways this process can, can be better, and we're committed to that, and we're committed to being able to provide our work around how we're responding to community feedback. But I wonder, Eliza, if you want to say a few things related to the action plan.
Sure. Yeah, I think, I'm always grateful in these conversations when the action plan comes up, because it shows that people are paying attention to it, and we all invested a lot of time and effort to make sure we heard from a broad cross-section of the community in developing that plan. And there are many, many recommendations. I think the recommendation that Karen is referencing is related to governance models for the park, not specifically to how White Stadium as a BPS facility is managed. And we looked at a lot of precedents from different cities and how major parks in those cities can be managed so that they effectively meet the needs of the communities that use them. And yes, the recommendation of the plan is that Franklin Park will benefit from significant public investment and should not be turned over as a park facility for private management. But that's different than what we're here talking about today. And I think the city is showing that we're continuing to invest in the park as a whole through public investments at White Stadium, at the Overlook, along Circuit Drive, over at the Shattuck, at the Bear Dens, in park operations and maintenance and management. And I think that hits on a lot of the recommendations that came out of the plan and will continue to be our work going forward.
Thank you so much, Liza. And then I want to kick it over to Morgan to just identify here that the type of partnership we're seeking is also one in which we're not handing over control to a private entity. BPS is the underlying owner of the entire site. And I wonder, Morgan, if you can speak to that more clearly.
Thanks, Diana. I think you said it all. You know, as I said earlier, the judge disagrees with the claims that there are processes that we are supposed to be going through that we are not. The parcel that the stadium sits on is owned by and under the care and custody of Boston Public Schools. It will continue to be. It will always be a BPS facility. We are contemplating a 30-year lease where the city of Boston, BPS, and the community get to occupy and use the stadium for the vast majority of the time.
Thank you, Morgan. Tony, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to unmute?
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for this design change. Everything looks great. I'm a BPS coach and also a community track and field program coach and a former BPS athlete. Again, it's great to see the everything improving, but most importantly, also the cross country course will remain as it is because we have a world-class cross country course. Now it's great to see that we'll have a world-class track and field facility as well as soccer facility. Again, as Ted said, earlier, we need to have an area for the throws. As much as we hate to see anything being moved, but we also have to realize there are very limited space in the city of Boston for our athletes to practice any of the throwing events. So to lose that here would make the whole design, obsolete. So you have to have the throws, and we have to have it somewhere that is safe. As far as the BPS side, great to have weight training as well as sports medicine, something BPS does not have now. I coached for many years in Boston at the high school level and at the college level, and now again with the middle school, and just great to see just the improvement and how much more our athletes will, benefit from all this here. Again, we can't make everybody happy, and it's hard, but also was involved with the Back Bay Fens with Emmanuel College. We did that field over, and I think everybody's benefited from that design. So community benefits, the college benefits, and BPS benefits. So hopefully we can do the same and everybody can benefit.
Thank you so much for your comments, Tony, and for your contributions to the track and field program as well. Let's see, I see the next hand up is Tom. Tom, do you want to unmute?
Yep, okay, got it. I want to applaud the design team. You've done a great job in integrating, making improvements in the plan, and very happy with what I'm seeing and hearing today. I think that it's incumbent on the city, perhaps also with a lot of the opposition is related to the park as a natural resource. And it says on the city's website under White Stadium that the Franklin Park Action Plan recommends the development of a park-wide natural resource and ecological management plan. That work has not yet begun. That's a direct quote from the city's website. If the city steps forward and produces this, or at least starts it, that's going to answer a lot of people's concerns about taking away green space. What I'm hearing today in the plan is that this is a net gain for green space and the park and the city. So I'm happy with the design, as I said, but I really think it's incumbent on the city not just to keep saying we're going to wait till the next fiscal year to come forward with this work that has not yet begun. It needs to begin. That's my comment.
Thank you so much, Tom. And I think I'll go ahead and tee this up for my colleague Liza, who can speak more specifically to this. I think there's a myriad of capital investments that are part of this year's budget proposal that focus on Franklin Park overall. And I do think that there's some enabling infrastructure with staffing that allows us to get to those goals around the broader ecological health of the park. But I know Liza can speak to that in greater detail.
Yeah, do you want me to jump in quickly? Yeah, I think there's a lot of projects that are top priority that came out of the action plan, and we're moving forward with them as sort of efficiently and effectively as we can. The ability to add to our maintenance staff on site is going to be significant, and we'll be adding, or not even adding, we'll be creating a natural resources crew that hasn't existed before to focus on the natural areas, specifically the woodlands. And that crew will be modeled after our Urban Wilds program that has been successfully managing urban wilds across the city for many, many years and has been growing in recent years. So I'm happy to answer more questions on our future programs and projects, separate from this conversation. If anyone wants to reach out, there's a lot of work happening, and we agree with you that that's an important piece.
Thank you, Tom. And one thing I will note too is I hope you come back for the third meeting, because we also want to talk a little bit more about our planting strategy and looking at successional planting strategies for the canopy here, so we can be planting the canopies of the future for the students that get to enjoy this stadium. Let's see. I think John, you have your hand up. John, do you want to unmute?
Oh, okay. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
I mean, like everybody, I'm thrilled at any progress on making White Stadium a wonderful place it should be and should have been the last 50 years. Again, what sticks in my craw again is I saw what happened to Carter Field and Rush, private-public partnership, Rush Field in down where Emerson is. People don't even know it's a public park anymore. And this is, in my opinion, this is, may look innocent, but the camel's nose under the tent when you have privatization. And next thing you know, scheduling is determined by the private entity, because after people always say, well, they're the one that put the money. I remember he's no longer our city councilor, Murphy. There were some questions about Emmanuel, that Clementi Field. And I remember Murphy shut it down at the city council. Well, they're the ones paying for it. So this is a cautionary tale. We tread very carefully, and we could do, Mayor Wu puts $50 million up. Sounds like you can get a hell of a lot done without a private for-profit corporation moving in on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. We appreciate those comments. I'm going to go ahead and set this up for my colleague, Chief Irish here, to speak to that. And while Chief Irish unmutes, I also want to note that I think we're taking notes on all of the feedback we're receiving. As you know, there's a series of different legal agreements that we're looking to create to sort of learn from those past experiences and ensure that we are providing the city with the best position and the community to have the best position in having this be a true community asset. So we appreciate your comments there. And Dion, do you want to add some additional comments?
Yeah, I'll add quickly, and I was actually thinking perhaps at the next meeting, we may just want to just spend a few minutes just focused on the Carter, because that comes up a lot. I've looked at that agreement and that partnership, and it appears to reflect agreement between the community, BPS, and Northeastern around the usage. So it's written into the agreement. It appears to be working the way it was intended, and there is a lot more access to BPS in the community than some folks are maybe perceiving. So I think it'd be helpful for us to talk more about that. But this is a different type of partnership arrangement than we're envisioning with than what happened with the Carter. This is a partnership where we're agreeing to a maximum of 20 games, and the majority of the other times the uses of the stadium is under BPS and city determination, of course, with community input.
Thank you, Dion. Let's see, Matthew, I see you have your hand up. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Matthew, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Hi everyone, Matt Pyers. I live on Granada Park, which is off of School Street in this corner of the park. My wife and I have lived in the neighborhood for the last 10 years. Also a small business owner in Jamaica Plain. Started off supporting this project because I love the idea of women's soccer, but generally have moved into the no camp, but still here to try to improve this project as much as possible if there's no going back. My question is centered around the design for space for players, coaches, the trainers, the visiting team, vendors, EMTs. I missed the first half of the presentation. I'm not sure if that's been highlighted, where those folks will go on game day. Is there special parking for all that, or will they be off-site and shuttled in for game day? That's pretty much my question.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I can set this up, and maybe Tamara or Dan can speak to this more clearly. I think we're still working through those design details and getting a better understanding of how overall site access works here, and where some of those facilities are needed during those game days. But we hope to continue to iron those details out and come back to you with some responses. Tamara?
Yeah, thank you, Diana. Yeah, we're aware of the needs, both sort of spatial and vehicular needs for game days. And we're working on some graphics to be able to communicate that through the upcoming transportation meetings. And we're also really listening to the feedback that's coming in from the various neighborhoods that are possibly affected by this, just to try to continue to talk within our with our transportation consultants, with the city. How can we do this best while being very respectful of the park and also the neighbors, and still being able to manage movement and safety. So we will get back to you. More to come.
Thank you, Matthew. Let's see here. I think we have one last hand up here. Beefy, do you want to mute?
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Just one more time. I just want to say one thing. Just want to give shout out to Mayor Wu and Chief Irish and everybody that's on this project. But I'm 55 years old, right? And it's been a long time to see something like this in Boston being built and coming together. It's a beautiful idea. And coming from a coach's perspective, if there's any coaches that are on here, this is why some of our students are running over to private schools and places like that, because this alone can keep our kids staying in Boston, wanting to play for Boston Public Schools because of stuff like this, stadiums being built and being able to use. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking at it from a coach's perspective. Like, I can't wait to get my team up there to run around on that field, or to watch the soccer, or to watch anybody up there, or to be able to come up there and sit in the park and just enjoy my grandkids and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So thank you to the city of Boston and all of y'all out of work on this. Don't let no one deter this plan. This is great. God is good.
Thank you, Beefy. So I think we're getting to time. I want to hand it back to Morgan, who's going to wrap us up and take us for his next steps. And just want to note that we're incredibly thankful to everybody's comments. Please keep sending them our way. This work continues to evolve, and we're committed to being a representation of the feedback we've received to date. So thank you all for your commitment.
Thank you so much. And Anchi, if you wouldn't mind going to the slide showing our upcoming events. So while she's pulling that up, there we go. So you see here sort of the sequence of community meetings that we are in the middle of for the series of design meetings. We are just concluding our second meeting. Our third one is coming up on May 22nd, so we hope to see you all there. I want to note that Article 80 review is also continuing. So next Wednesday, there will be the second IAG meeting. There will be some updates on design, but mostly we will be focusing on transportation, sharing more detail on the transportation plan and updates that we have made given the feedback we received in the neighborhood transportation meetings we had in the beginning of April. And then our third IAG meeting in June is going to be focused on community benefits. And then I also want to note the project is undergoing review through the Landmarks Commission Subcommittee. I believe our next subcommittee meeting is on May 14th. It's also undergoing review with the Bostic Civic Design Commission. The next meeting will be May 21st, and Parks review continues through the Parks Commission. So we hope to see you at our future meetings. For everyone who is looking for information on transportation and community benefits, I want to steer you towards the IAG meetings, and I hope to see you next Wednesday. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.